He tore her dress right there in front of 300 guests. Under the bright lights and flashing cameras of one of Chicago's most expensive charity galas, he grabbed the back of a billionaire's custom-made gown and ripped it clean down the middle. Crystals flew. The crowd screamed. Security tackled him to the marble floor. And by the time the police arrived, the videos were already going viral. A homeless man attacking a rich woman in a $500 plate ballroom. The whole thing caught on a dozen different phones from a dozen different angles. Everyone saw what happened. Nobody saw why. And what came next, what the cameras missed, what the crowd missed, what everyone missed except one tired detective who watched the videos one more time and looked at the wrong people, would change everything. His name was Marcus Reed. He was 32 years old. He was sleeping on cardboard across the street from the Grand Marquis Hotel when the night began. And he was the only person in that entire crowd who saw what was actually about to happen. This is his story. Abigail Carter was the kind of person you saw in magazines. At 35, she had built a technology company from nothing into a billion-dollar operation, software that helped hospitals manage patient care, the kind of work that actually mattered alongside the kind of wealth that turned heads everywhere she went. She lived in a penthouse with windows so wide you could see the whole city. Bank managers answered her calls on the first ring. She wore a custom-made deep blue gown to the charity gala that night, covered in tiny crystals, 6 months in the making, one of a kind in the entire world. She trusted systems. She trusted schedules. She trusted the big men in black suits with earpieces who surrounded her whenever she appeared in public. She believed that with enough money and enough smart people working for you, you were always safe. She had never been more wrong in her life. Marcus Reed had not always been homeless. 3 years before that night, he was a college student studying to become an engineer, a young man who loved learning and solving problems and had a bright, clear future in front of him. He had a mother who made the best apple pie, a father who had taught him how to fix cars, a little sister named Emma, 8 years old, who loved drawing pictures of animals. They were happy. They were normal. They were a family. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, a truck driver who had been working for too many hours fell asleep at the wheel on the highway. The truck crashed into the car carrying Marcus's family home from his grandmother's house. His mother died. His father died. Little Emma died. Marcus survived. For a long time, he wished he hadn't. The grief that came after was bigger than anything Marcus had words for. He tried to go back to college. He couldn't focus on anything. His mind kept showing him the accident, replaying it over and over whether he wanted it to or not. The doctors told him he had PTSD. His brain was stuck in the worst moment of his life and couldn't find its way out. He stopped going to class. He lost his apartment when he couldn't pay for it. He pushed away the friends who tried to help until they stopped trying. He ended up on the streets with a backpack and a piece of cardboard, and the world closed its eyes and pretended he didn't exist. When you're homeless, you become invisible. People don't look at you. They don't talk to you. They walk past you like you're part of the furniture of a city they'd rather not think about. But something unexpected happened to Marcus while he lived on the streets. Even broken, even hollowed out by grief, his mind stayed sharp. Sharper than it had ever been, actually, because when you live outside with no protection, you have to pay attention to everything. You learn to watch people carefully and know if they're safe or dangerous. You learn to read faces and voices and body language. You learn to hear conversations from 20 feet away and know within seconds whether they matter. 3 years on the streets gave Marcus a superpower he had never wanted. The ability to notice everything. To see what others missed. To read danger before it announced itself. On the night of the gala, Marcus was sitting on his piece of cardboard in the shadows across from the Grand Marquis Hotel, watching the expensive cars pull up and the women in gowns and the men in tuxedos walk inside. He wasn't planning to do anything. He was just watching, the way he always did. Maybe someone would throw away good food later. Maybe he could find a warm spot to sleep near the hotel vents. But then he heard voices. 2 men stood near the valet parking area, about 20 feet away. They were dressed in suits and ties like guests at the party, but something about them made every instinct Marcus had developed over 3 years snap to attention. "She'll be at the entrance in about 10 minutes, the first man said. Quietly. Calmly. Not nervous at all. the calm of someone who has done this before. The dress makes her easy to spot. Everyone will be looking at it, the second man said. All the cameras too. When the crowd gets tight at the door, that's when we move. Fast and clean. Nobody will know until it's over. Abigail Carter won't see it coming. Marcus felt ice-cold water pour down his back. These were not party guests. He looked across the street. Abigail Carter was arriving, stepping out of a shiny black car into a wall of camera flashes. She smiled her perfect smile and waved to the photographers. Her security team surrounded her. Big, serious men who were watching everything, except the two men in suits who were already moving through the crowd toward her. Marcus got up and ran toward the entrance. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. Please, he said, grabbing the arm of the nearest security guard. You have to listen to me. There are two men in suits. They said they're going to hurt Miss Carter when the crowd gets tight. They're right there. The guard yanked his arm away like he was something dirty. I already told you to leave. But they're right there, please just look. A second guard grabbed Marcus roughly by both shoulders and shoved him backward onto the sidewalk. Pain shot through his palms where they scraped the concrete. If you come near this entrance again, we're calling the cops. Marcus looked up from the ground. Through the forest of legs, through the crowd, he could see Abigail Carter smiling at someone, completely unaware. The cameras were all pointed at her beautiful dress. And the two men were almost at her side now, their hands moving toward their jacket pockets. Nobody was going to help. Nobody was going to listen. If Abigail Carter was going to survive the next 30 seconds, Marcus would have to do something that would destroy his own life. He made his choice. He ran. He pushed through the crowd. Women gasped, men shouted, security guards turned toward him. But Marcus was already moving too fast. The two men were almost at Abigail. Their hands were reaching into their pockets. Marcus could see exactly what was about to happen even if nobody else could. He reached her just as they were about to make their move. And in one quick, desperate motion, he grabbed the back of her beautiful blue dress and pulled as hard as he could. The sound of tearing fabric cut through the night air. Crystals scattered everywhere, sparkling as they fell. The dress split down the back. The crowd gasped in horror. Cameras exploded, click, 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 capturing everything. Abigail screamed and fell to her knees, her face full of shock and humiliation and rage. Security tackled Marcus immediately. 3 men slammed him to the ground hard enough that he felt his head bounce off the marble. His mouth filled with blood. His arms were twisted behind his back. But lying there on the floor with his face pressed against the cold marble, with blood dripping from his lip and security guards crushing him, Marcus saw what nobody else noticed. The 2 dangerous men had stopped moving. They had frozen. The cameras and attention that were supposed to be fixed on Abigail were now fixed on Marcus. The tight crowd that was supposed to provide their cover had scattered in confusion. Whatever they had planned, they couldn't do it now. Marcus watched them look at each other. Then, very calmly, very quietly, they turned and walked away, melting into the confused crowd like smoke. Nobody noticed them leaving. Nobody except Marcus. Why did you do that? Abigail was crying now, her makeup running, a jacket wrapped around her shoulders to cover what remained of the dress. Why would you attack me? Marcus said nothing. Because what could he say? Who would believe him? He was a homeless man who had just destroyed a billionaire's gown in front of 300 people. The dangerous men were gone. He had no proof, no evidence. He knew exactly how this looked. By the time the police arrived and put handcuffs on Marcus, the videos were already viral. Homeless man attacks billionaire at charity gala. Within an hour, millions of people had watched. Within 2 hours, everyone had an opinion. Lock him up. Homeless people are so dangerous. That poor woman. The dress cost $50,000. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody cared about the truth. They only saw what the video showed. A homeless man attacking a rich woman. Marcus sat in a police holding cell, his hands still cuffed, his lips still bleeding, listening to officers in the next room calling it an open and shut case. He stayed quiet because he knew the truth sounded crazy. I heard 2 men planning to hurt her, so I ripped her dress to save her. They would think he was insane. So he said nothing. At his first court hearing, wearing an orange jumpsuit with his hands cuffed in front of him, he looked exactly like what everyone thought he was. His court-appointed public defender, a young man named Thomas Chin who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, met with him in a small room at the courthouse. "Marcus, I'm going to be straight with you," Thomas said. "This case is unwinnable. We have you on video committing assault. We have hundreds of witnesses. The prosecution has offered a deal: plead guilty to disorderly conduct, serve 6 months in county jail, complete anger management classes afterward, and walk away with no permanent record." "You want me to say I'm guilty," Marcus said. "I want you to be realistic. If you go to trial, you're looking at 2 to 3 years in state prison. This deal gets you out in 6 months. "But I didn't attack her," Marcus said, his voice rising. "I was trying to save her." Thomas sighed. "Do you have any proof? Any evidence? Any witnesses?" Marcus thought about it. The two men were gone. Nobody else had heard their conversation. "No," he admitted quietly. "Then take the deal. 6 months and this nightmare is over." Marcus sat very still. He thought about how easy it would be to say yes, to admit to something he hadn't done, to make it all stop. But then he thought about what that meant. If he admitted guilt, the truth would disappear forever. Those two men would get away with whatever they had been planning. Abigail would never know that someone had tried to save her life. And Marcus would spend the rest of his years knowing he had lied about the only decent thing he had managed to do in 3 years of living on the ground. "No," he said firmly. Thomas stared at him. "Marcus, I want a trial." Across the city, in her penthouse apartment, Abigail Carter sat on her white leather couch wrapped in a blanket, staring at her phone. The videos of the attack were everywhere. Her torn dress was everywhere. Her screaming face was everywhere. Her phone kept buzzing, her lawyer wanting to discuss the lawsuit, her publicist wanting a statement, her business partner wanting to control the narrative. But Abigail wasn't thinking about any of that. She kept replaying the moment in her mind. The homeless man running toward her. The look on his face. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was desperate. Afraid. And then, right after he tore her dress, right before security tackled him, she had seen something strange. 2 well-dressed men in the crowd had suddenly stopped moving. She had seen them look at each other with something that looked like frustration. She had seen them walk away quickly. At the time, she had been too shocked and humiliated to process it. But now, sitting alone in the quiet of her apartment, the memory kept bothering her. What kind of people leave a party right after something that dramatic? Everyone else would stay to watch, to gossip, to record more videos. You would have to have a reason to leave quickly. A specific reason. Her lawyer Richard Morrison, $800 an hour, sat across from her and told her the case was straightforward. Marcus Reed would go to prison. They should also file a civil lawsuit. Emotional distress, destruction of property, public humiliation. It would send a message. Millions from a homeless man? Abigail asked quietly. "It's about your image," Richard said. "It sets an example." Abigail looked at him. What if he had a reason? Richard stared at her like she had suggested something unhinged. A reason to attack you and destroy your dress in front of 300 people? Abigail, the man is homeless. There's no rational reason. But Abigail couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the story everyone was telling. "I need time to think," she said. After he left, she made a decision. She would stay silent. Not because she had forgiven Marcus. She was still frightened, still humiliated, still angry. But because something deep in her gut told her that this story wasn't as simple as everyone assumed. And until she understood what had actually happened, she wouldn't add her voice to the mob. Her name was Rachel Monroe, and she was an investigator with the Chicago Police Department. Not robberies or murders, but fraud and schemes and things that seemed too simple to be true. 45 years old, short gray hair, brown eyes that had spent 20 years on the force learning to look at things sideways. The Marcus Reed case bothered her. Not because she thought he was innocent. The videos were clear, the witnesses were clear. But something about the whole thing felt off. She couldn't put her finger on what. So she did what she always did when something felt wrong. She watched the videos again. frame by frame. And that's when she saw them. In the background of one recording, just before Marcus tore the dress, two men in suits were moving through the crowd, moving with purpose, heading directly toward Abigail Carter. Their hands were reaching into their jacket pockets. Then Marcus intervened, and the two men froze. One pulled his hand out of his pocket, empty. They looked at each other. And while everyone else was watching Marcus get tackled to the ground, these two men turned and walked away very quickly. In under 90 seconds, they were gone. Rachel sat back in her chair. She pulled up a second video, different angle, clearer on their faces. They didn't look shocked like the other guests. They looked frustrated, angry. The anger of a plan that had just failed. She called her partner, Detective James Park. 20 minutes later, he was in her office watching the same footage. What kind of person leaves a party right after something that dramatic? Rachel said. Everyone else stays to watch, to gossip. Unless they have a reason to leave fast. James looked skeptical. The guy's homeless, Monroe. Probably mental health issues. Humor me. Let's find out who these two men are. They spent 3 hours combing through every video from that night, extracting the clearest images of the two men's faces. Then Rachel ran them through the police database. The computer beeped. Vincent Torres. Age 38. Multiple arrests for assault and battery. Suspected connection to organized crime. Witnesses in every case mysteriously declined to testify. Never convicted. She clicked the second profile. Marcus Delano. Age 41. Assault, extortion, witness intimidation. Also never convicted. James leaned back. These aren't party guests. These are career criminals. So what were they doing at a charity gala? Rachel said. She pulled up the guest list. Torres and Delano were not on it. They had crashed a high-security event. Then she pulled up everything she could find about Abigail Carter, her company, her recent business dealings, anyone who might want to hurt her. She found it in a news article from 2 weeks before the gala. Abigail Carter's company had just testified against Datacore Industries in a major fraud case. Her testimony had cost Datacore $50 million and gotten their CEO indicted. The trial's next phase was 1 month away. Vincent Torres had worked as a security consultant for Datacore 3 years prior. Rachel stood up. We need to talk to Marcus Reed. Now. Marcus sat in the interview room looking at the two detectives across the table from him. He had expected more of the same, more disbelief, more dismissal. He was already composing the silence he would retreat into. Then Rachel opened her folder and laid photographs on the table. Clear photographs of two men's faces. Do you recognize these men? She asked. Marcus's eyes widened. His hands began to shake. That's them, he whispered. Those are the men I heard. The men you heard talking about hurting Abigail Carter? He nodded. We believe you, Rachel said. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Why? Because these two men are Vincent Torres and Marcus Delano. They are career criminals with connections to organized crime and a connection to the company whose CEO your intervention may have protected the key witness against. You might have saved her life. Marcus closed his eyes. So I was right. They were really going to hurt her. Possibly hurt her. Possibly threaten her into changing her testimony. We don't know exactly what they planned. But I destroyed her dress and got arrested, Marcus said. His voice was hollow. Some hero. Sometimes heroes don't get happy endings right away, Rachel said quietly. But we're going to do everything we can to prove what really happened. Over the next 3 days, Rachel and James worked almost without stopping. They found a hotel employee who remembered two men asking detailed questions about Abigail Carter's schedule the week before the gala. They found security footage from a parking garage showing Vincent Torres watching the hotel entrance for hours the day before the event. They found records showing that Marcus Delano had purchased 2 tickets to the gala under a fake name using a stolen credit card. The men themselves had vanished. Their apartments were empty. Their phones were disconnected. Someone had tipped them off. It doesn't matter, Rachel said. We have enough to prove they were there with bad intentions. And that means Marcus Reed may have been telling the truth all along. She picked up her phone and made the call she had been thinking about for days. Miss Carter? This is Detective Rachel Monroe with the Chicago Police Department. I'm investigating what happened at the charity gala, and I believe there's more to the story than what the videos show. Would you be willing to meet with me? A long silence. Then Abigail said something Rachel hadn't expected. I've been waiting for someone to call. When can we meet? They met at a quiet coffee shop, far from the media. Abigail wore sunglasses and a simple jacket. Rachel wore her badge on her belt. They sat in a corner booth. Rachel laid the photographs on the table. Do you recognize these men? Abigail studied them carefully. Then her eyes widened. Yes. I saw them at the party. They were in the crowd near the entrance. Right before Marcus. Right before it happened, I remember these two men moving toward me. Then everything went crazy. When I looked for them afterward, they were gone. They didn't just leave, Rachel said. They ran. And we know why. She explained everything, the criminal records, the data core connection, the evidence that Torres and Delano had planned the evening in advance. Marcus Reed wasn't attacking you, Rachel said. He saw them planning something, tried to warn security, and when nobody listened, he did the only thing he could think of to stop them. Abigail sat very still, processing it. He saved my life, she said finally. We believe so. Abigail looked down at her coffee. Her hands were trembling slightly. I let everyone destroy him, she whispered. I let the media call him crazy. I let everyone think he was a monster. And he was trying to save me. She looked up. I should have asked. I should have looked for the truth instead of protecting my image. Her eyes were full. What happens now? Now we need your help, Rachel said. We need you to testify in court about what you saw that night. The two men moving toward you. The way they disappeared immediately after. Will you do it? Abigail didn't hesitate. Whatever you need. I'll do it. 1 week later, Marcus Reed stood in court again. But this time, everything was different. The courtroom was packed, reporters in the back rows, cameras along the walls. His lawyer Thomas Chin looked different this time. Not exhausted. Prepared. Confident. Because now he had evidence. The judge banged her gavel. The trial began. Thomas called his first witness. Detective Rachel Monroe took the stand, calm and professional, and told the whole story. The two criminals in the background of the videos, their records and their connections to data core, the evidence that they had planned something for that night. The jury listened with wide eyes. The prosecutor cross-examined Rachel hard. She had no confession. No weapons had been found. She couldn't prove definitively that an attack was going to happen. So this is all circumstantial evidence, the prosecutor said. Just a theory. Rachel stayed calm. The evidence is strong enough that we've opened an official federal-level investigation. But no, I cannot prove with absolute certainty what would have happened in the next 30 seconds if Marcus Reed had not acted. The prosecutor smiled. No further questions. Marcus felt his hopes sinking. Even with everything Rachel had said, it still sounded like a story. A story without a definitive ending. Then Thomas said, "The defense calls our next witness. Abigail Carter." The courtroom went completely still, then erupted in whispers. The victim was testifying for the defense. Abigail walked in wearing a simple gray suit. No jewelry. No performance. She looked nervous, but she held herself steady. She was sworn in. Thomas asked her gently to tell the court what she remembered from the night of the gala. "I remember arriving at the hotel," Abigail said. "I remember the cameras. I remember feeling watched, like someone was staring at me with an intent I couldn't quite name." She paused. "Then Marcus Reed ran through the crowd and tore my dress. I was terrified, humiliated, angry. I didn't understand why it was happening." "And what do you think now?" Thomas asked. "After learning about Detective Monroe's investigation?" Abigail looked directly at Marcus. He was sitting at the defense table in his orange jumpsuit, watching her. "Now I believe he saved my life," she said. Her voice was steady, even as her eyes filled. "Now I understand that he saw danger I couldn't see. And he tried to warn people. But nobody would listen to him because he was homeless. Because his words didn't matter to anyone in that crowd." She turned to face the jury. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. We saw a person living on the streets and we assumed the worst. We didn't ask questions. We didn't look for the truth. We just believed what was easiest to believe. She paused. Marcus Reed destroyed my dress. But those other men, the ones who vanished, they were going to destroy something much more than that. I don't know for certain what their plan was. But I do know this: the moment Marcus was tackled, they left immediately. And that tells me their plan failed. He stopped it. The courtroom was completely silent. "Miss Carter," Thomas said quietly, "are you asking this court to drop the charges against Marcus Reed?" "I'm not just asking," Abigail said firmly. "I'm begging. This man doesn't deserve to be in jail. He deserves a medal." The prosecutor tried. She showed the videos again. She called witnesses who had seen Marcus tear the dress. She argued that even if Marcus believed he was helping, he had still committed assault. The jury heard all of it. They deliberated for 2 hours. On the charge of assault, we find the defendant not guilty. On the charge of destruction of property, not guilty. On the charge of disturbing the peace, not guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel, calling for order, but she was smiling too. "Mr. Reed," the judge said, "you are free to go. The court apologizes for the time you spent in custody. Your record will be cleared completely." A guard unlocked the handcuffs. For the first time in weeks, Marcus's hands were free. Thomas shook his hand. "Congratulations." But Marcus was looking at Abigail. She was standing across the courtroom watching him. He walked toward her. The crowd parted. They stood facing each other. The billionaire whose life had been saved and the homeless man who had sacrificed everything to save it. "I'm sorry," Abigail said. Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry for everything you went through. For not believing you. For not speaking up sooner." "You didn't know," Marcus said. "Nobody knew. I should have asked." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This isn't enough. Nothing will ever be enough. But it's a start." Marcus opened it. His hands shook when he saw the amount. $100,000. "Use it to get back on your feet," Abigail said. "Get an apartment. Get some help. Get your life back." Marcus stood there holding the check, unable to speak. "And I'm offering you a job," Abigail said. "My company needs people who can see what others miss. People who do the right thing even when it costs them everything." She looked at him steadily. "Would you consider working for me?" Marcus stared at her. "You want to hire me?" "I want to give you a chance," Abigail said. "The same chance you gave me." By the next morning, the headlines had changed completely. "Homeless hero saves billionaire's life." Man everyone called crazy was right all along. Abigail Carter, he saved my life. The same social media that had destroyed Marcus now celebrated him. The same videos that had condemned him were now being played to praise him. But Marcus wasn't on social media. He was in a hotel room Abigail had paid for, lying in a real bed for the first time in 3 years, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The check was on the nightstand. Tomorrow he would open a bank account. He would begin looking for an apartment. He would start rebuilding. But tonight he just lay there, feeling safe. For the first time since the accident that had taken his family, he felt safe. He thought about his mother, his father, little Emma with her drawings of animals. He wished they could see this. He wished they knew that even after losing them, even after hitting the very bottom, he had still managed to do something good. "I hope I made you proud," he whispered to the empty room. The months that followed were not a fairy tale. They were hard work, one day at a time. Marcus used Abigail's money carefully. A small, clean apartment in a safe neighborhood. Basic furniture. Clean clothes. He began seeing a therapist for his PTSD, the help he had needed for 3 years and never been able to access. And he accepted Abigail's job offer. His title at Carter Technologies, security consultant. His job was to review the company's security systems and find the weak spots, the things other people missed. Turns out that 3 years of living on the streets and learning to see danger in every shadow was, in the right context, an extraordinarily valuable skill. In his first week, he identified 3 significant vulnerabilities that the company's professional security team had completely overlooked. A blind spot in the camera coverage at the back entrance. Delivery personnel who weren't being checked carefully enough. A pattern of employees propping doors open that created a chronic access risk. "You're remarkable at this," Abigail told him after he presented his first report. "You found things our entire professional team missed." Marcus smiled. "When you live outside, you learn every way to get in somewhere. I'm just using that knowledge for good now." 6 months after the trial, Abigail organized another charity gala, different in every way from the one where everything had happened. This one was raising money for homeless shelters and mental health services. And she had asked Marcus to be the keynote speaker. He stood backstage at the Grand Marquis Hotel, the same ballroom, with his hands shaking and his heart pounding. The event coordinator gave him the signal. 2 minutes. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to," Abigail said quietly. She stood beside him in a simple, lovely dress. "I want to," Marcus said. "People need to hear this. Not for me. For everyone else still out there on the streets who nobody sees." He walked onto the stage. The spotlight was bright. 400 people fell silent. 6 months ago," Marcus began, his voice steady, "I was homeless. I slept on cardboard. I ate from trash cans. I was invisible. When people walked past me on the street, they looked away. They pretended I didn't exist." He paused. "I became homeless because I lost my family in a car accident. The grief was bigger than I knew how to carry. I had PTSD. I lost everything. And once you're on the streets, it's almost impossible to get back up. Nobody hires you. Nobody trusts you. Nobody believes you. And nobody will listen to you, even when you're telling the truth, even when what you're saying could save a life, because you're not the kind of person people listen to." The room was completely still. He told the whole story. The overheard conversation. The security guards who shoved him away. The desperate decision in the last few seconds. The tackle, the blood, the handcuffs, the viral videos, the jail cell, the lawyer urging him to plead guilty to something he hadn't done. The choice to refuse. "I destroyed something valuable to save something more valuable. A human life. And everyone hated me for it." He looked at Abigail in the front row. But one detective decided to look at the wrong part of the video. One woman decided to admit she had been wrong and speak the truth, even though it was hard and costly and public. And because of those 2 people, the truth came out. He turned back to the crowd. "Here is what I learned. Homeless people are not invisible. We are not dangerous by nature. We are not less than. We are human beings who have fallen on hard times. Some of us have mental illness. Some of us have PTSD like me. Some of us have addiction. Some of us just had very bad luck. But all of us deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be treated with dignity. Because inside every homeless person is a story. And sometimes inside that story is a hero, waiting for someone to give them a chance." He paused. "Tonight, you're here to raise money for shelters and mental health services. Thank you for that. But I want to ask you to do one more thing. The next time you see a homeless person on the street, don't look away. Look at them. See them. Maybe just nod. Maybe say hello. Maybe stop and listen to what they have to say." His voice cracked. 6 months ago, nobody would listen to me. And that almost cost someone their life. Don't let that happen again. Don't let people become so invisible that their warnings don't matter. He stepped back from the microphone. For a moment, the ballroom was completely silent. Then 400 people rose to their feet, and the sound of the applause filled every corner of that enormous room. Marcus stood in the spotlight and let it wash over him. 6 months ago, people had screamed at him in that same hotel. Tonight they were standing for him. He could feel the difference between those 2 things in every part of his body. Abigail came onto the stage and hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life. And for teaching me to see." 1 year after the night that changed everything, Marcus sat in a small coffee shop having lunch with Detective Rachel Monroe. They had become friends. She had made a point of checking in on him over the months, making sure the transition back to normal life was holding. "Abigail promoted me last month," Marcus said, stirring his coffee. "Director of Security. I oversee the entire department." Rachel smiled. "I'm proud of you." I'm proud of me too, Marcus said, which is something I haven't been able to say in a long time. He pulled out his phone and showed her something. And look, I enrolled in online engineering classes, finishing the degree I started before the accident. Rachel's eyes filled. Marcus, that's incredible. I have my life back, he said quietly. Not the same life I had before. A different life. But a good one. A meaningful one. He looked out the window at the street. I also volunteer at the homeless shelter on weekends now. Teaching people how to stay safe. Helping them find jobs. Trying to give back what was given to me. They talked a while longer. When they stood up to leave, Rachel turned to him. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it? Tearing the dress? Everything you went through? Marcus thought about it for a long moment. He thought about the jail cell, the orange jumpsuit, the handcuffs, the blood on the marble floor, the videos that had called him crazy and dangerous and a monster. He thought about his little sister Emma drawing pictures of animals at the kitchen table. He thought about the check on a hotel room nightstand and the first safe night of sleep in 3 years. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. Because if I hadn't done it, Abigail might be dead. And yes, I went to jail. Yes, I was humiliated. Yes, it was the hardest thing I have ever survived. He looked at Rachel. But the truth came out. And I got my life back. And maybe some of those 400 people in that ballroom are looking at the people they pass on the street a little differently now. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. Sometimes you have to go through the darkness to find the light. And sometimes the person the whole world dismisses as nobody is the only one who can see what everybody else is missing. If this story moved something in you, if you believe that the people we walk past every day on the street deserve to be seen, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because Marcus Reed's story carries one truth that is simple and uncomfortable and worth sitting with. The next time someone tries to tell you something and every instinct you have says to dismiss them because of how they look or where they sleep, stop. Listen. Because you never know whose warning might be the only thing standing between you and something you never saw coming. See people. It costs nothing. And sometimes it saves everything.